What if, what if the key to treating one of the most painful, aggressively scarring skin conditions on the human body isn't actually a cream you apply to your skin, but a microscopic ecosystem living inside your colon?
I mean, it sounds totally like science fiction when you first frame it that way. We are just so conditioned to treat skin issues right at the surface level.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
And if you're tuning into this deep dive, you likely already know the devastating surface realities of lichen sclerosus.
Yeah, the structural changes to the tissue, the intense physical discomfort, the fusing of the skin.
It's awful. But we are not going to spend time today rehashing those symptoms or, covering the basics of the condition. You already know what it looks like.
Right, our focus today is different.
Yeah, today we are completely bypassing the surface to look at the actual engine driving the disease. We're taking a stack of recent clinical data and research papers to explore the incredibly complex relationship between the gut microbiome and the systemic inflammation associated with lichen sclerosus.
Because the standard medical approach, which, relies heavily on ultra-potent topical steroid creams, is really focused on crisis management.
Just putting out the immediate fire.
Exactly. It's attempting to suppress the local immune response just to halt the scarring. But the sources we are looking at today force us to zoom out and ask a much more fundamental biological question.
Right, like why is the immune system attacking that specific tissue in the first place?
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to understand the origin of that immune attack, we really have to look at the patterns of the patients who suffer from it, right?
We do. And the data points heavily toward this being an autoimmune phenomenon. The systemic patterns are they're impossible to ignore.
Yeah, people dealing with lichen sclerosus have a statistically massive prevalence of other established autoimmune diseases. We're talking about things like Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, vitiligo, alopecia areata.
Right, so it's not a localized glitch. It's not just the skin of the vulva or the perineum forgetting how to behave.
No, the entire immune system is basically operating on a hair trigger.
Yeah, it has fundamentally lost its self-tolerance. That means the regulatory mechanisms that usually tell your white blood cells, hey, this is our own tissue, stand down, they're failing.
It's attacking itself.
Exactly. And when we see that kind of body-wide immune dysregulation, gastroenterologists and immunologists immediately look to the gut. They look to what we call the gut-skin axis.
And I want to make sure we visualize this gut-skin axis clearly, especially the whole concept of intestinal permeability or, leaky gut.
It's a crucial concept to grasp.
Think of it kind of like a house with a hidden plumbing leak. If a pipe bursts deep inside the walls of your kitchen, you might not actually see a puddle on the kitchen floor right away.
Right, water is sneaky.
Yeah, the water travels along the internal beams, it follows the path of least resistance, and the damage eventually shows up as this massive rotting water stain on the ceiling of your living room.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the plumbing in this scenario is the mucosal lining of your small and large intestines.
Right.
And that lining is only one single cell thick. Those cells are held together by these proteins called tight junctions.
So what happens when it breaks?
Well, when your gut microbiome experiences severe dysbiosis, which is just a state where pathogenic or inflammatory bacteria outnumber the beneficial ones, those tight junctions degrade.
The pipe bursts.
Exactly, the pipe bursts.
And what exactly is leaking out into the bloodstream when that happens?
Mostly bacterial endotoxins. And the most notorious one is called LPS, or lipopolysaccharide.
LPS. Right, I saw that in the research.
Yeah, LPS is a structural component of certain bacterial cell walls. When LPS slips through that degraded intestinal barrier and enters your bloodstream, your immune system freaks out.
It thinks you're under attack.
Completely. It reacts as if you have a life-threatening systemic infection. It floods your body with inflammatory cytokines.
So that's the water traveling along the beams in our house analogy.
Yes. The systemic inflammatory fire originates in the gut, but the visible water damage surfaces as a flare-up on the skin.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We have a source today that goes beyond just, theoretical links. It's a recent two-sample, bidirectional Mendelian randomization study.
Quite a mouthful.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I first read that methodology, my eyes glazed over a bit. Like, how does looking at genetics in a Mendelian randomization actually prove that the gut is causing the skin issue, rather than them just, happening at the same time?
So it's actually a brilliant statistical tool. Mendelian randomization uses your genetic variants as a proxy to determine causality.
Okay, how does that work in plain English?
Well, we know that certain genes dictate the environment of your gut, making it highly hospitable to specific strains of bacteria.
Right, so your genes set the stage.
Exactly. So if a researcher looks at thousands of people and finds that the genetic variations promoting a specific gut bacteria are consistently linked to a drastically lower risk of developing lichen sclerosus, they can infer a causal relationship.
Because your genes are randomly assigned at birth, so it eliminates all those lifestyle confounders.
Exactly. Your genes dictate the bacteria, and the bacteria prevent the disease.
So it's essentially nature's own randomized controlled trial. That is wild.
It really is.
And this specific study isolated the microscopic peacekeepers. Right. They found 4 specific classifications of gut bacteria that exert a strong causal protective effect against lichen sclerosus.
Right, most notably the bacterial order Burkholderoides and the genus Butyrivibrio.
Butyrivibrio. Say that 3 times fast.
I know, right? But those specific microbes are not just passively sitting in your digestive tract. They are microscopic chemical factories.
Like actually doing work.
Yes. When they ferment the dietary fiber you eat, they produce highly beneficial byproducts. We call these byproducts postbiotics.
Postbiotics. Okay, so you have the probiotics, which are the live bugs.
Right.
You have the prebiotics, which is like the fiber you feed them. And the postbiotics are the actual compounds they manufacture that do the heavy lifting in the body.
That is the exact mechanism. And the most critical postbiotic produced by Butyrivibrio is a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate.
Butyrate. And why is butyrate so important?
It is the primary energy source for the colonocytes, which are the cells lining your colon. It literally provides the fuel those cells need to repair the tight junctions we talked about earlier.
Oh, wow. So it physically patches the leaky pipe.
Yes, it patches the pipe. But butyrate's most profound mechanism is what it does once it enters the bloodstream.
What does it do?
It acts as a systemic epigenetic regulator. It actively inhibits a protein complex called NFB.
And from the sources, NFB is essentially the master switch for cellular inflammation, right?
Exactly. It dictates the expression of hundreds of pro-inflammatory genes. When you lack butyrate-producing bacteria in your gut, NFB just remains switched on.
It's like leaving the stove on.
Yeah, and your immune system stays locked in that hypervigilant autoimmune state.
Wait, let me push back here. If this is systemic inflammation leaping from the gut because of a systemic lack of butyrate, why wouldn't it cause, I don't know, eczema all over your arms or psoriasis on your scalp?
That's a great point.
Right. Why is this systemic fire specifically targeting and destroying vulvar or penile tissue?
That is the pivotal question, and it brings us to a fascinating study from the journal MDPI. They analyzed the local vulvar microbiome of women with lichen sclerosus.
Okay, so looking at the bacteria actually on the skin.
Yes. The systemic inflammation originating in the gut fundamentally alters the microenvironment of the skin. The water damage doesn't just stain the ceiling, it changes the local ecosystem.
The tissue itself becomes hostile.
Exactly. In healthy vulvar skin, the dominant protective bacteria is lactobacillus.
Which we hear about a lot in women's health.
Right. Lactobacillus utilizes glycogen to produce lactic acid, which keeps the local tissue at a low acidic pH.
And that acidity is basically a chemical shield against pathogens.
What's fascinating here is that the MDPI researchers found that in patients with lichen sclerosus, the local lactobacillus populations are just decimated.
The chemical shield totally drops.
Yes. And when that low pH environment is lost, the tissue is colonized by anaerobic bacteria, which are microbes that thrive in deep, oxygen-deprived environments.
That does not sound good.
It's not.
Yeah.
The study showed massive increases in tissue-degrading genera like Escherichia and Porphyromonas.
What's terrifying about that is those are pro-inflammatory bugs. They aren't just like taking up space on the skin.
No, they secrete enzymes that physically break down human tissue to feed themselves.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The loss of systemic immune regulation from the gut creates an environment where protective skin bacteria die off.
Which leaves the door wide open.
Right. The aggressive anaerobic bacteria move in, driving the intense local inflammation, the architectural fusing of the tissue, and the severe scarring that characterizes the condition.
So it's basically a dual front war. You have systemic immune dysregulation from the inside and pathogenic bacterial invasion on the outside.
Exactly.
But, I mean, we can't easily go in and manually seed our colons with Butyrivibrio, nor can we easily paint our skin with raw lactobacillus.
No, that would be tricky.
But we absolutely have control over the raw materials we provide to the bacteria already living inside us, which shifts our entire focus to the clinical data surrounding diet.
Diet is the primary lever you have to pull here. The lichen sclerosus support network highlights how the standard American diet acts as a massive accelerant for this condition.
Yeah, specifically through ultra-processed refined sugars.
Absolutely.
They cite this wildly illuminating piece of clinical history regarding sugar and the immune system. Ways here, sugar causes inflammation, which sounds so vague.
It does sound like a buzzword.
Right. But the actual cellular mechanism involves how glucose physically interacts with your white blood cells. There is this foundational 1970s study demonstrating that a spike in blood glucose paralyzes your immune defenders.
The mechanism comes down to molecular competition.
How so?
Well, vitamin C and glucose have very similar chemical structures. Your white blood cells, specifically macrophages, require massive amounts of vitamin C to perform phagocytosis.
Which is the process of engulfing and destroying bad bacteria.
Right. Exactly. So when you consume a heavy load of refined sugar, the macrophages mistakenly absorb the glucose instead of the vitamin C.
Oh, wow. It's like putting diesel fuel into an unleaded engine.
That's a perfect analogy. The cells just stall out.
That's crazy.
The study demonstrated that for up to 5 hours after a significant sugar spike, the immune system's ability to clear out bacterial pathogens drops by nearly 50%.
50%. So if you're dealing with aggressive anaerobic bacteria on the skin and a dysbiotic gut, crippling your macrophages with sugar spikes just allows those pathogens to multiply totally unchecked.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? It means food isn't just about calories or weight management. It is a direct biochemical dial for your immune system.
It really is.
And if sugar turns the inflammatory dial way up, the clinical consensus points toward a Mediterranean-style anti-inflammatory approach to turn it back down.
Turning it down requires specific compounds. Let's look at omega-3 fatty acids, which are heavily concentrated in wild-caught salmon, sardines, and mackerel.
They don't just passively float in your blood, do they?
No, they physically incorporate themselves into the membranes of your cells, displacing another fatty acid called arachidonic acid.
And arachidonic acid is bad news for inflammation.
Yes. By displacing it, omega-3s prevent your body from synthesizing pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. They essentially shut down the inflammatory assembly line at a cellular level.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
And the data on extra virgin olive oil works on a very similar mechanical level, I noticed.
Yeah.
I found the clinical breakdown of olive oil fascinating. It contains a phenolic compound called oleocanthal.
Oleocanthal is remarkable from a pharmacological standpoint. It acts almost identically to ibuprofen.
Wait, really? Like actual ibuprofen?
Yes, it is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory compound that physically inhibits the COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes in your body.
So when you generously consume high-quality cold-pressed olive oil, you're basically providing a systemic, low-dose enzyme inhibitor that cools the entire immune response. Pair that with the polyphenols from dark berries and leafy greens, which act as electron donors to neutralize the free radicals tearing through inflamed tissue, and you start building a real chemical defense system.
But we also have to rebuild the gut microbiome itself.
Right, the plumbing. And the sources lean heavily into fermented foods for this.
Unpasteurized sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi. Introducing these fermented foods provides transient probiotic strains.
Transient, meaning they don't stay forever.
Right. They might not permanently colonize your gut, but as they pass through, they alter the pH of the intestinal tract, making it highly hospitable for your own native butyrate-producing bacteria to multiply and thrive.
Adding the right fuels makes complete sense biologically. But the most heated debates in the lichen sclerosus community revolve around what to remove.
Yes, the eliminations.
Gluten and dairy are the usual suspects for elimination, mostly due to their potential to exacerbate leaky gut. But the sources highlight a highly controversial yet mechanically fascinating trigger: oxalates.
Oxalates are naturally occurring compounds found in extremely high concentrations in foods we typically revere as health foods.
Like spinach, almonds, beets, Swiss chard.
Exactly.
And many patients report that consuming high oxalate foods triggers immediate, severe vulvar pain flares. The mechanism behind this is wild.
It comes back once again to the microbiome.
It always does.
In a healthy gut, you host a specific bacterium called Oxalobacter formigenes. Its sole purpose is to consume and degrade oxalates before they can enter your bloodstream.
But if your microbiome is compromised, maybe from multiple rounds of antibiotics,
you lose that specific bacteria.
And without the bacteria to digest them, the oxalates just slip right through the intestinal wall.
They enter the blood and they bind with systemic calcium. This creates microscopic, jagged calcium oxalate crystals.
Oh, that sounds painful.
It is. Your body has to excrete these crystals, and it does so through the urine. As these microscopic, needle-like crystals pass over the already fragile, inflamed, and damaged vulvar tissue of someone with lichen sclerosus, they create microabrasions.
Triggering intense burning pain.
Exactly.
But this raises an important question regarding clinical data versus anecdotal reality. Because we don't have double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, definitively proving a low oxalate diet cures lichen sclerosus.
We don't. The clinical evidence on oxalates and vulvar pain is mixed, and we really must be careful not to present it as a universal cure.
Right, because food fear is a real thing.
It is. A severe, hyper-restrictive diet where a patient is terrified of eating spinach or a single almond induces massive psychological stress.
And elevated cortisol from dietary anxiety will suppress the immune system and trigger an autoimmune flare just as easily as the wrong food.
The stress of the diet becomes worse than the trigger itself.
So what's the solution then?
The clinical consensus suggests a methodical scientific approach to your own biology, a supervised elimination diet.
So you remove suspected triggers like oxalates or gluten for, what, 4 to 6 weeks?
Yes, 4 to 6 weeks. Observe the tissue and the pain levels. If you experience profound relief, you've identified a mechanical trigger in your own body.
But if nothing changes, you just reintroduce the food.
Exactly. There is no biological utility in permanent, stressful dietary restriction without localized symptom improvement.
Well, we have completely dismantled the standard view of this condition today. We've moved far beyond just looking at thinning, itchy skin.
We've gone deep into the machinery.
Yeah, we've traced the architecture of an autoimmune disease that begins with leaky plumbing in the gut, fueled by a severe lack of butyrate-producing bacteria.
And we've seen how that systemic fire changes the local environment of the skin, allowing anaerobic pathogens to invade.
Plus, we've mapped the biochemical pathways of how sugar paralyzes immune defenders, how olive oil inhibits inflammatory enzymes, and how missing bacteria allow oxalate crystals to abrade the tissue. It's a lot to take in.
The science is incredibly dense, I know, but the application is deeply practical.
Right, it gives you actionable steps.
Exactly. While medical science does not currently offer a permanent cure for lichen sclerosus, understanding this gut-skin axis provides a tremendous amount of agency.
You are not a passive victim just waiting for a topical cream to work.
No, by repairing the intestinal barrier, feeding the short-chain fatty acid producers, and managing the chemical signals you send your immune system via your diet, you are actively dismantling the disease at its biological root.
It is a total paradigm shift.
Yeah,
And it really makes you wonder where dermatology is heading in the next decade.
it does.
I mean, if this condition is truly driven by a lack of postbiotics, like butyrate, failing to suppress the NF-key inflammatory switch, could the future of treating severe genital scarring look entirely different?
That's $1 million question.
Imagine a future where, instead of applying a potent immunosuppressant cream directly to damaged tissue, a patient is prescribed a highly personalized, targeted oral postbiotic capsule.
Like a hyper-specific delivery system.
Right, a capsule designed to directly deliver the specific short-chain fatty acids missing from their gut, repairing the tight junctions, turning off the systemic inflammatory switch from the inside, and completely restoring the chemical shield on the skin.
It would revolutionize the field.
Totally. Because if the skin flare-up is just the ruined ceiling showing us the water damage, maybe the future of treating chronic skin conditions is finally learning how to permanently fix the plumbing.